This is the best Druid build in Diablo 4. It's the fastest, the most fun, and the most powerful build I've ever played, and that is the Storm Wolf Shred build. The build is based around being a werewolf all the time and shredding down everything on the screen in seconds. The thing that makes it so powerful is it is super fast, it can teleport from mob to mob, and has a huge crit chance with huge crit damage. You use storm skills to buff yourself and weaken enemies, and then you just tear around shredding everything in sight, from normal mobs, elites, and bosses. It also has amazing defenses and lets you do things way above your level. Here I am at level 85, taking on a 102 nightmare dungeon, so over 15 levels higher, and you can still blitz through mobs and elites no problem. So the way this works is you keep up cyclone armor for your defenses, you keep up blood howl for a big attack speed, and then you keep up hurricane to weaken the enemies around you. They're just 3 constant buffs that will be on you. Then you pop Grizzly Roar, but because of aspects of the direwolf, you don't turn into a super strong bear, you become a super strong werewolf. And then you just hold down right click and shred. And because of the way shred works at the end of the combo, you also teleport. And because our attack speed is so high and our crits are so high, you just teleport between everything constantly. It's so fast. You just keep your buffs up and just keep using shred. It is the most fun I've ever had on a druid. It's taken the leveling from feeling like a chore to being just pure fun. Like, I just can't wait to keep pushing it higher and higher because you can just blitz through everything. So let's break down exactly how to make this Storm Shred Druid build. Okay, let's get into this. Starting with the aspects, luckily a lot of these can be got from different dungeons, so I'll show everything up on screen. You don't need that many legendary drops for this, so yeah, I'll show it all as we go along. So starting with the aspect of disobedience, this increases your armor whenever you deal damage up to 40%. We're going to be a werewolf rather than a werebear, so this is really important to have as extra armor. Then we get the Storm Claws aspect. As we deal crit strikes with Shred, we do lightning damage to those around us. That's why when we jump into a big pack, there's like a big lightning burst, which is really good for AoE. Then onto the Vigorous. Again, we need the defensives. So increased damage reduction while shapeshifted into a werewolf. This is a permanent 10 to 15% damage reduction. Absolute must have. Then onto the Storm Shifters aspect. This is one that maybe not mandatory, and if you think there are better ones out there, this is the one I would replace. While Hurricane is active, you get two ranks in your shapeshifting skills. Definitely not a mandatory one, but you're going to have Hurricane up almost constantly. And if you look at your spells, Cyclone is a shapeshifting skill, Blood Howl is a shapeshifting skill, Hurricane is a shapeshifting skill. You get the point. Grizzly Rage, Storm Strike, Shred. So technically everything's a shapeshifting skill. So this is a +2 to everything. So I think it's really, really good. But again, if you're going to get rid of one, this is the one I'd replace. Okay, onto the big ones. This one's the most important aspect in my opinion, the dire wolf aspect. 2 things are really good here. If you can try and roll high on this, that's really important. And then second is putting it on your amulet. If you put it on your amulet, you get 50% boost to the stats. I'll talk about why the stats are so important. So Grizzly Rage now turns you into a dire werewolf instead of a dire bear. So this means that you get a huge speed boost, 23 to 38%, and instead of damage reduction, you get spirit cost reduction, 45 to 75%. With stuff you can get in the Paragon board that gives you more spirit, you can have almost 100% uptime on your shred. You will never run out of spirit if you can get a high roll on this and put it on your amulet. This is just a game changer. It's what makes the build so fast, and it's really, really powerful. Then onto the Rampaging Werebeast. This is also really important. You get a increased duration on your Grizzly Rage, which helps you keep it up for longer. Also, if you crit while in Grizzly Rage, your crit strike damage goes up, and this is a crit build, so this is perfect. These two are just so good together. Then Loop of Retaliation. Your core skills deal up to 20%, up to 1% of increased damage based on your Fortify. You do have quite a lot of Fortify in this build, so it's a nice one to have. Then onto the Accelerating. Critical strikes with your core skills. Shred is a core skill. Increases your attack speed by 15 to 25%. Again, I'd say this is mandatory. It's crazy how much attack speed you get here. And the more you attack, the faster your attack speed, the more chance you have at crits. If your attack speed is higher, you're getting more shred combos in. And at the end of every combo, you teleport. If you were going to get rid of if you disagree with this build or you've seen things that you think are better, I've tried things and this is what I think works best. But if you think you can make it better, the 2 I would say you should get rid of would be this one. This one is probably the least mandatory. It's just a little damage boost. And this one, if you don't think you need the survivability, maybe swap that one out. Then onto the uniques. There are 2 uniques that you need for this build. You do not need the werewolf chest piece. You don't need the thing that, you are permanently a werewolf. You don't need that. What you do need, I'm sorry, I can see people closing the video now. Because I know a lot of people are struggling to get this. The Tempest Roar. Your Storm skills grant Spirit. That's how we keep permanent Spirit uptime. And then your Storm skills are now also Werewolf skills. That means that when we're in Werewolf form, we can use Cyclone Armor, Hurricane, and Storm Strike. This is unfortunately needed for the build. Next up, this is not needed. I've ran this build for about 3 days. Ever since the patch, I've been trying to make this build work, and I've not had this. I got it last night on stream. I'll link that down below if you want to come hang out, but we've been grinding for this for days, so you don't need it. The build is very, very powerful without it, but this takes it from like a good build to an insane build. Like it takes it from a very good build to the best build in the game, in my opinion. The waxing gibbous is extremely powerful. So yeah, I'll also link a video down below where I've talked about how you can get a better chance of getting uniques. Really helpful for targeting certain uniques. But I personally think these two, this one's mandatory. This one is really, really useful. But yeah, that's the gear. Okay, onto the spirit boons. So I would go for, on the deer, wariness, reduced damage from elite, huge. Avian wrath on the bird, 30% crit damage. That's really, really, really helpful. This is a crit build. Down to calamity on the wolf for increased duration of the ultimate. That's grizzly rage. This build revolves around keeping grizzly rage up as much as possible. So that's amazing. Then on the snake, I'd take both of these. I'd take Masochist and I would take Calm Before the Storm. That reduces our cooldown. That's a chance to reduce our cooldown, and that's when we crit, we gain life. Everything's a shapeshifting skill, so we're going to gain a lot of life with that. Only thing I would say maybe change, if you don't want any of these, maybe you don't like Lucky Hit, or you know, there's something you disagree with, I'd take this. Swoop and attacks, 10% attack speed. Attack speed works on this build so well. I've tried this a few times. It does feel really good, but then I always keep going back here for the defensives. So yeah, your pick here, but very tempted by this one, but that's how I've got it set up at the minute, and it's working really well. Okay, now onto the skill tree. So we'll go on here, pop it out. Right, you want to take Storm Strike, enhance it, and then Fierce. 50% chance to make enemies vulnerable. What we do here is we don't have many ways to apply vulnerable outside of our exploit glyph. So this is a really good way to reapply vulnerable on prolonged fights, like boss fights. Most stuff will go down in the first couple of seconds, but if you're struggling, you can just hit them with a couple of Storm Strikes, re-vulnerable them, and get that damage back up. Moving down, Shred. 5 out of 5 Shred. If you got anything on gear, I think it drops on gloves. So try and roll for extra Shred. Get as much Shred as you can. It's our main source of damage. Enhance it for attack speed. And then the final one, Primal Shred, gives us the dash. In addition, we get extra crit strike. Such a good ability. I've looked at this for poison. I've tried to do a poison build with this, but right now the big dashes work a lot better. Next up for the passives, this is going to really depend on how well you're managing your spirit. If you have like permanent spirit uptime, what you can do is you can change this, but for leveling, or for if you're finding your spirit is going down and you're having to replenish, I would go 2-3, 3-3, 9% more spirit cost, but increased damage, and then 3-3 this. Basic skills generate 18% more spirit, so you can use this to get your spirit back. Then go down here, crit strike against close enemies increased by 6%, extremely important, and 9% movement speed in werewolf form. 3 out of 3, both of those, huge damage, huge speed. Then move over to here, cyclone armor, enhanced cyclone armor to slow enemies. And then once you enhance it, you have a choice. You can either go into preserving. Every 10 seconds it intensifies, reducing damage taken, or you can go to here, innate, which adds vulnerable. I personally really like the damage reduction. I find this needs all the this build needs all the damage reduction it can get, so I like this one. If you're just finding it really easy and you're not really pushing higher nightmare dungeons, take that one. Moving down, passives, 1 point in Ancestral Fortitude to unlock Vigilance. Damage reduction, again, very, very important. These are our 2 defensives, so we're going to get a lot of that. Blood Howl. The main reason we use Blood Howl is not to heal. I mean, the healing is good, but the main reason for this build, Blood Howl also increases your attack speed by 15%. So you take Enhanced and then you take Preserving. I think this is huge. You can use it to heal for 20% of your life, which is amazing, but the increased attack speed just makes this build so fun. Okay, down to Hurricane. This does a big hurricane around you, and we looked at certain things that work off a hurricane. Very important skill. There's damage all around you. Enhance it. Enemies are slowed. Again, you have a choice here. If you're struggling for damage, I would take Savage. Reduces enemies take reduced damage around you. I really like this one. Has a 15% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. If you're jumping into a pack with Hurricane, some of those enemies might become vulnerable. And the way it works is if we can get down one enemy, we proc our other things, and we can dash, and we proc Waxing Gibbous, which gives us stealth, whatever it's called, which then gives us a crit. So I think that's really useful for popping a quick kill on a trash mob. So your choice there, but I really like that. Down here, 1 point in Neurotoxin to get to Envenom. Poison enemies take increased crit damage, and then crit strikes with werewolf skills deal base damage as poison damage over 4 seconds. So basically what we're doing here is by having 3 points in both of these, as we crit, we poison them, and when they're poisoned, we get more crit. This is a crit build, so these are really helpful, really helpful. Moving down, of course, Grizzly Rage, Prime Grizzly Rage to make you unstoppable, and then Supreme to get fortified. That's why we use the aspect that gives us increased damage while we're fortified, because we're going to be in this form for a very long time. So as you stay in the form longer, you get more fortify, and we increase damage when we're fortified. That's why they work so well together. On the defensives, increase the amount of fortify you gain from all sources. Nature's Resolve. I 3 out of 3 all these. When you're struck, chance to fortify, and then finally reduce the duration of crowd control effects by 9%, tripled if you have fortify. This is good for very high nightmare dungeons. You will take a lot of L's if you don't have a good way to get out of crowd control. Things will crowd control you into traps, they'll crowd control you into poison, and if you don't have a way to get out of it, you're gone. That's just the end. So this is really, really useful if you're in higher nightmare dungeon keys. There's other things you can take here, but I really like this setup the best. And then down to the key passive, Lupin Ferocity. Every 6th hit crits and deals 70% increased damage. This is another reason why we want super high attack speed. The more attack speed, the more hits. You want to go through this combo. So it's 1, 2, 3, dash, 1, 2, 3, dash and crit. 1, 2, 3, dash, 1, 2, 3, dash and crit. So as you go through that combo, the more attack speed gets you through that combo faster. Really, really nice key passive to have. And I wouldn't even suggest any other. I wouldn't recommend any other. I think this is the only one you should use for this build. Normally I'd say, well, maybe you could use that. This is just, it's so good. I just always use this. Okay, skill tree done. Okay, so onto the Paragon board. Rather than sharing game, I always like to share the D4 builder link. I'll put it down below so you can see this in full as well, and then I'll just go through it with you here, and you can just reference it whenever you want. I'll put it in the description. Here's how I would run it. I'd start the starter board, crawl up to the right, grab the 10% damage into the middle, and I would put in the first glyph, Exploit. This gives you vulnerable on hit, and it increases vulnerable damage. It's one of the best glyphs in the game on most classes, so it's definitely something I would take. I'd go up on the right and just grab the free dex just because it's a nice little boost. And then I'd go on the left and get damage and willpower on the way out. The reason you go get the dex is just to get the requirements here of 25 dex. Leaving, I would go on to the Ancestral Guidance. It's exciting to go get damage. I put a damage board on first, but if you can get your Ancestral Guidance board, you can really knock out your spirit problem. And then you can just hold down right click and shred everything. There are also some really nice damage stuff on the Ancestral Guidance board, so that's where I go. Flip it this way, head up, grab the glyph, and I always put in Spirit. Crit Strike increases damage enemies take from you, and for every 5 dex, you get more Crit Strike. Then I would just go out in all directions and get dex. There's loads of dex on this board. There's dex there, there's dex all around, there's dex down there, there's dex here. And then I would go here, and get core skill damage. Shred is our core skill, so core skill damage, loads of it here, really big boost to damage. And then yeah, I'd leave this side, get the Spirit, max Spirit, loads of other Spirit here, head up here, grab this, max Spirit, Spirit on kill, and then the same around, Spirit, Spirit on kill, all the way around. And then I'd head all the way up to here. Spending 75 Spirit gets you 30% increased damage. Once you get this build near the end, you won't use a great ton of Spirit because you'll have so much Spirit reduction, but you still do use some, so it's nice to have. And it's a nice little boost every now and again. I mean, 6 points to get up to there on the way out. Then I would come left and go for Lust for Carnage. This is your big damage board, and I would head straight left, and then you want to get both sides. You want to get the legendary and the glyph. So let's start with the bottom side. Head down here, werewolf skill damage, all the stuff around it, and I would put in the Undaunted glyph. For every 5 intelligence, more damage while fortified. And then if you get 25 in, you get damage reduction the more fortify you have. I'd get both sides of this, just because there's some nice intelligence here, which helps for the requirement. And then on the right, you've got werewolf skill damage all around. I'd go for that. Then I'd head down, grabbing any more intelligence that you need on the way out. And I'd head to Heightened Malice. You want to get the legendary node, 3 or more poison damage, 3 or more poisoned enemies nearby, you deal 45% increased damage. We have a thing in our skill tree, which gives us a chance to poison them. So really helpful. Then you want to go down here. You can grab that on the way out just because, it's on the way. All the way down, I would head to the glyph. On the way, I would grab these, damage to poison enemies, damage to elites. It's really nice because there's that there as well, 8% damage to elites. And there's another one down there. So there's a really nice little cluster that's just like a sidetrack. Then head down to your glyph. In here, I like the Fang and Claw glyph. Grants 155% bonus to all magic nodes. That's the blue nodes. And then it also gives you 12% increased damage if you get 40 willpower. So the reason this is so good here is because there's not a great amount of places to put this on the Druid boards, but this is my favorite place to put it because you get all of these blues get doubled. So 5% damage to poisoned enemies, 1, 2, 3. That becomes 30% damage to poisoned enemies, and then it's the same down here, damage reduction from poisoned enemies. That all gets doubled to 4%, and then you may as well just grab the dex and stuff as well because they all get doubled. It's a nice stat bonus to have. Then I would revert back up, and you want to head north from here. You want to head up here and grab the legendary Crit Strikes with Werewolf, restore 2 Spirit. Again, getting on top of our Spirit issue. On the way, I'd grab this Werewolf skill damage, Crit Strike damage. All the stuff around it is crit and Werewolf damage, so amazing. Heading up, I go for the Inner Beast. On the Inner Beast, flip it this way, get the glyph. I put in here the Werewolf. Every 5 points increases damage in Werewolf form, and then damage reduction in Werewolf form. Over here, I like this as well. You get willpower, armor. It's a nice little one. Over here, you get the willpower as well. Shapeshifting damage. That helps get the 40 willpower we need. Most of our stuff is shapeshifted damage. So yeah, this is just a really nice cluster as well because it works so well together. And then I'd go up here and I'd get the attack speed and all the stuff around it for attack speed and damage. But yeah, that's how I would run it. I'm 85 right now, so I'm still short a few skill points, but that's how I'm planning to finish it off. Mine looks very similar to this so far, but yeah, that's how I'd run it. This is how it looks all completed together. But yeah, I'll link this down below. Follow it as much or as little as you want. Now let's go over the gear stats on your gear. I really wouldn't say to overcomplicate it on this build. This is a very fast, very high damage build. So bucketing everything together, you want damage. This works well if you beat something, you get a boost, you get a crit, you go back into, is it prowl mode? Stealth, it's stealth. So you want to take things down as fast as possible. So damage and attack speed are the key thing you should be looking for. And when you look for damage, there's many ways you can get it. Damage while shapeshifted, damage to injured enemies, damage against close enemies, crit strike damage, vulnerable damage. All these things are damage. So I would say number one priority is getting as much damage as you can fit in this build. Then I would go for attack speed. Then I would go for ranks in shred as well. Pretty much the big damage, crit chance, crit strike, anything damage, attack speed, ranks in shred, and then just go for your defensives. Go for your defensives. So anything with fortify, anything with damage reduction from close enemies, damage reduction from poisoned enemies. But yeah, I really wouldn't overcomplicate it. You don't need that much. You get so much that you can really just go all in on damage here and just pick up a few defensives. It's a really, really nice build. You don't find yourself on the back foot very often. For the gems, I would go for what are the blue ones called? Sapphires? Yeah, sapphires on the armor, damage reduction while fortified. As you're in the Grizzly Rage, you'll be fortified all the time, so that's a constant damage reduction pretty much. And then on your weapons, crit strike damage to vulnerable enemies. The first hit makes them vulnerable, so then we should crit. And with the waxing gibeus, you get extra chance to crit. Every 6th hit is a crit. We have lots of crit chance in this build anyway, so yeah, it's a no-brainer really to crit strike on vulnerable enemies. And then armor for the jewelry. I think every build is just really good with armor and jewelry. Let me know in the comments if you think there's something better here, but I think I go armor on pretty much every build I make, but yeah, let me know if you think different. That's how I'd go. Sapphires, green, and skulls. Yeah, that's the gems. That's everything. I think I lost my mind a bit towards the end. I've been working on this build for days to try and make it really good and just try and make it look as good as it should look and explain it well enough. So I really hope you find this video useful and helpful, and it helps you make a build that I think is the most fun you can get to on a druid. So yeah, I really hope you find it useful. I'll link the default builder with everything on it as well down below. I try and put a lot into these videos and keep them as jam-packed with information as I can. So I really hope they've helped. If they have, liking the video helps me out so much. And subscribe for more builds as they come out. I'm covering a lot of Diablo 4 stuff. So yeah, if you want to see them as they come, subscribe for more content. I also stream over on Twitch, which I'll also link down below if you're into watching, boomers play ARPGs. So yeah, that's it. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.